Good afternoon, everyone. This is Mark O'Malley here with the Hurricane Outlook and discussion for September 17th, 2019, recorded around 3 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Well, Hurricane Dorian has continued to intensify with maximum sustained winds of 100 miles per hour, now moving east-northeast at 9 miles per hour, moving a little bit faster than we have currently expected here, and this will stay far enough away from the United States and Canadian maritime regions, although towards the end of its journey and lifespan as a tropical system, it may get somewhat close to the northern Canadian Maritimes. We do have hurricane watches that are issued for Bermuda at this current time. We have hurricane watches and tropical storm warnings issued for Bermuda, and as such we do have the intermittent advisories that are starting on Humberto now. So with these intermittent advisories, these are just position updates, intensity updates, and movement updates for the 2 o'clock advisories. The full forecasts are still at 5 o'clock, at the normal times as before. So Humberto is not really expected to become a major hurricane, although it could make a run at becoming a major hurricane sometime between tonight and tomorrow morning. As it is continuing to head off towards the north and east, it could make a run at becoming a hurricane. We'll go to another 3-day cone, a major hurricane rather. And this is going to come pretty close to Bermuda. As such, tropical storm warnings and hurricane watches have been issued. And the main reason for the hurricane watches is that this hurricane force wind field is expanding, and it is forecast to continue to expand. So even though that Humberto will stay far enough offshore to keep the core, the center of circulation away from Bermuda, there will still be impacts with tropical storm force winds and even potentially hurricane force winds starting by later during the day tomorrow morning even, and then continuing into the day tomorrow night, and then gradually then lifting away Thursday. We'll see these impacts start to lessen. By 8 o'clock in the morning on Thursday, this is moving very swiftly off towards the north and east. And then during the full forecast, you can see eventually this will turn out to the open Atlantic. This will be a big swell producer, however, for the United States East Coast. There is mainly for United States interest, rip currents, which can and have killed people, and some swells. Those will be something to kind of keep in mind for the whole entire United States East Coast this upcoming week and weekend. That is something to keep in mind here, because swells can and have killed people in the past. So there's one thing to kind of keep in mind here. Looking at Humberto on the satellite here, this is the visible satellite from tropicaltidbits.com. You can see a very well established eye here. It has re-cleared out from yesterday. This is Bermuda right here. This is re-cleared out from yesterday. Nice expansive outflow. Even you can start to see that outflow here, even across the Outer Banks of North Carolina, Rodanthe. Those regions could see those serious outflow bands kind of shaking away from Hurricane Humberto. You can see the core here. It's a very well established core. However, you can now start to see some of that energy being stretched out as this is beginning to undergo its transition into becoming an extratropical cyclone, which means that this will still retain a warm core feature all the way through Bermuda, but once it starts to pass through, this will be losing a lot of its tropical characteristic, but the impacts will still be the same and stretched out over a wider area. You can see a little bit of drier air here, but not really a whole lot. Recon has found that the flight level winds were stronger and the surface winds are stronger. So this is only about 15 miles an hour away from becoming a major hurricane, and it could do so as it continues to head off towards the north and east here over the next few days. Again, main time if this was going to be a major hurricane would be tonight into tomorrow morning as it's getting closer to Bermuda. That's the main time frame. Bermuda's right here. This should stay far enough away from Bermuda, from Bermuda to bring the actual core, which is this region right here. The actual core should stay well away, but the impacts will still be felt across that region. We have newly formed tropical storm Emilia, which has, we'll go to the update here. Amelia has formed and actually has made landfall near Freeport. And the heavy rain and flash flooding threats are going to be the main problem. Maximum sustained winds of 40 miles per hour, and it has made landfall near Freeport, Texas. This is a storm that has just formed today, but we've kind of kept an eye on this. This became Invest 98L last night and has developed into a tropical storm today. It came from that upper level low that was actually imparting shear on Humberto. This was actually the upper level low was imparting shear on Humberto during this past weekend, and while it was down near the Bahamas, and now this upper level low transitioned into a closed low level circulation, and it has become a tropical storm. And you can see here, this is from the COD Meteorology website here, that this is Tropical Storm Amelia right here, or Amelia, however you say that. You can see it is pretty well established. The inner core is right about here, and as it made landfall, kind of developed from this low-level, kind of vortex region, a part of the upper level low that transitioned to a surface low and kind of drifted off towards the north. And you can definitely see that banding effect here. This is going to set up extremely heavy rainfall for portions of southeastern Texas over the coming days. This could bring as much as over 10 inches of rain for southeastern Texas, Houston, Freeport, those areas. Some of the places that were impacted by Harvey could also see a rendition of a very heavy rainfall event, a very dangerous situation that is setting up here. So again, while this is not a hurricane, it is a tropical storm. Tropical storm warnings remain in effect for portions of the southern Texas coast here, but the main threat from this tropical storm is going to be heavy rainfall across even into southeast or southwestern Louisiana. This whole region could see at least 5 to 10 inches or more of rainfall over the coming days, especially if you live along the coast. Here you can actually see this is the track forecast. We'll go back to the track forecast. So this is expected to be a very slow mover and only be Thursday only a little bit further inland. I mean, this is not going to go that far inland and shoot off towards the north here. So again, you can see by tomorrow morning this is a tropical depression and retains tropical storm strength or tropical depression strength at least until later tomorrow. The main key again is going to be this heavy rainfall event that's going to be setting up across this region. Again, it's formed from an upper level low that kind of transitioned across this region over the last few days, and earlier today a tropical storm formed in this region, is now continuing to form and move off towards the north and east, or north and west, while this made landfall just a little while ago. We also have Tropical Depression 10, which formed earlier today. The tropics are getting very busy here, and we'll kind of touch on that here in just a second and how I think it's going to get even more active. But we have Tropical Depression 10 that will be a tropical storm probably by later tonight, and it's actually pretty close to becoming a tropical storm now. So this is expected to become a tropical storm tonight, and this will be the next name, I believe, is Jerry. So this will likely be Tropical Storm Jerry as it continues towards the west-northwest here, and then eventually the northern Leeward Islands really have to pay attention to this. Even Puerto Rico, the U.S. Virgin Islands, portions of the Dominican Republic, you are in that 5-day cone, and although that the center is forecast to not really pass right over you, you are still within that 5-day cone, and as such there could be tropical storm conditions for portions of the northern Windward Islands, Puerto Rico, and the Dominican Republic. This is the percentage of tropical storm force winds, the probability of that. So this is kind of your main track right in through here. But again, we're continuing to monitor this, and this is expected to be a hurricane by later in the week. This is expected to become a hurricane by Friday, and then be a 90-mile-per-hour hurricane here approaching the Turks and Caicos in the Bahamas. So again, for our folks in the Bahamas and the Turks and Caicos, do not let your guard down. You have yet another system to watch. That is not to say that this is going to be into the Bahamas and impact the Dorian-ravaged regions. That's not saying that. Some of the indications do take this out to sea, and some do not. So we are continuing to monitor for folks, but regardless, Impacts to portions of the northern Windward Islands could begin as early Friday morning as a strengthening hurricane begins to approach the region. So again, a lot to monitor in that region. And you sort of see what I mean here. We do now have almost that tropical storm sort of look to it. We kind of see a little bit of banding, not a whole lot. We had a little bit more banding earlier in the morning with these bands, but we've had some nice convective bursts with another convective burst ongoing, near the center, and that should continue to happen, and lower the pressures here over the next coming days. So this is going to become future Tropical Storm Jerry as it continues off towards the west-northwest. And we're going to have to watch this for potential impacts to the lesser, or not the Lesser Antilles, but the northern Windward Islands later this week by Friday, probably by about Friday morning, Friday afternoon. Impacts could be felt across portions of the northern Windward Islands as this is becoming a hurricane and a strengthening hurricane through that time. Again, for folks here in the U.S. Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, and even the Bahamas, Turks and Caicos region need to be monitoring the progress of this future tropical storm. So there's a lot to kind of talk about there. We do have a lot of recon flights that are scheduled. We have recon flights in Humberto. We also have a couple for what will be eventually Jerry in the next coming days. So we have a lot of recon flights out for that. Also, behind Tropical Depression 10, we have yet another tropical wave to watch. This will be, I believe, Invest 99L eventually, which is not designated yet, but at some point I believe it will be, as a 20% chance of development over the next 5 days as it continues to head off towards the west. So a lot to monitor here. You can see here we have a lot of tropical activity sprouting from this Madden-Julian oscillation that's moving across phases 8 right now, which is the western hemisphere, basically favoring the eastern Pacific, and then moving into phase 1, which will favor the western Atlantic here. This will highly favor that region. We go to the ECMWF Madden-Julian oscillation from today until October 1st, and this is the European model, one of the better widely regarded models here. You can see we're in phase 8 right now. And boys, look at some of these ensemble members staying really well active, amplified into phase 1. And we could see a really big sprout of activity through portions. We'll actually kind of go back here to that 5-day map. Portions of these regions could get really active coming in the next few weeks. And that is not to hype anything up, not to say that there's going to be any land impacts. We do not know where these storms form, where they go. We don't know that yet, but somewhere in this region, I do believe that activity will start to get really busy, and even across portions of the main development region, we could see that get amplified as well. And then these begin to go into phase 2, which would also favor, at that point, that would favor the main development region, if I am understanding that correctly. So there's a lot to watch here over the coming days, and especially with this MJO forecast moving into phase 1, moving into phases 8 and 1 and getting highly amplified. This is going to be a very significant setup here over the coming weeks. From now until October 1st and even past October 1st, there could be a very favorable pattern setting up in the Western Atlantic, in the Caribbean, Gulf of Mexico, Western Atlantic, and even potentially the main development region. Things could be lighting up across the board, and that is not to try to scare anyone. Again, we do not know where these things are going to develop or go, but it could get really busy here in a heartbeat, and we are starting to see that now with 3 active tropical cyclones in the Atlantic and yet another wave to watch coming off of Africa. So there's a lot to watch here over the coming days, and of course I will be on top of it here. I will probably have another video forecast update here at around 7 o'clock, going over Humberto, Tropical Storm Amelia, and Tropical Depression 10, soon to be Tropical Storm Jerry. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you all stay safe, and I will be back around 7.